Welcome, and thank you for joining us for part 6 of our 6-part educational program, Global Healing Approaches for Enhancing Your Immune System Capabilities. Today, we're talking about exercising to build a robust immunity and the role fitness and movement play on our health and well-being. Brought to you in partnership by Know We Well, thedoctor.com, and the Celiac Society of India. In this important 6-part series, we've been looking at the most critical aspects of the immune system and how we can tap into ancient, integrative, mainstream, and cutting-edge practices to make it efficient and to enhance its ability to handle day-to-day stresses and disease. We've been exploring a regenerative whole health approach from top experts around the globe to help transform your body's ability to handle disease and give you realistic approaches to protecting yourself and your family. I'm your host, Jane Lynn Britton, and I'm the Director of People Experiences at Know We Well. Before we get started, I'd like to call your attention to the Q&A at the bottom of your screen and to invite you to send us your questions. We do weave many of them into the discussion and we'll answer as many others as we can at the end of our discussion today. And now I would like to introduce you to our experts. Dr. Tom O'Brien is an internationally recognized expert and speaker focused on food sensitivities, environmental toxins, and the development of autoimmune diseases. He's a chiropractic doctor, a certified clinical nutritionist, and a diplomat of the American Clinical Board of Nutrition, a teacher, book author, and founder of thedoctor.com, as well as the visionary behind the Gluten Summit, A Grain of Truth, one of the first online summits that brought together 29 of the world's experts on the gluten connection to diseases, disorders, and a wide range of symptoms and ages. And Dr. Tom is the Chief Health Officer at Know We Well. Kartik is an Indian cricket commentator and former cricketer. He was part of the national team from 2000 to 2007. And aside from domestic cricket, Mr. Kartik played for Royal Challengers Bangalore in the Indian Premier League and has been in demand in English county cricket as an overseas player representing Lancashire, Middlesex, Somerset, and Surrey. Mr. Kartik has been part of the Indian Premier League commentary team since 2015 and regularly commentates on the Indian national team's home games. Anthony Rimmel is a health, lifestyle, and fitness coach with expertise in exercise science, physiology, and nutrition. He believes that our greatest wealth is our health and coaches others on how to stay fit and maintain their health and wellness. Mr. Rimmel is the co-founder of Ground-Based Nutrition, a natural whole food supplement company that specializes in plant-based nutrition. And he is also a musician, a yogi, competitive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu martial artist, and avid surfer. Today's program will be moderated by Ms. Mala Sakri. Ms. Sakri has been rated as one of the 50 most influential women in media for 2 years in a row and is one of the most prominent names in the Indian media and entertainment circuits. She was host of a popular TV show and has been moderator and anchor for many group events and programs, interviewing celebrities like Dr. Deepak Chopra, Dr. Jeffrey Life, Vishal Dadlani, and more. She has also launched and run operations of the most popular health and lifestyle magazines in India, including Cosmopolitan, India Today Plus, Women's Health, Good Housekeeping, and others. And now it's my pleasure to turn our program over to your moderator, Ms. Mala Sakri.
Thank you, Jane Lynn, and good morning, good evening, good very early morning, Tom and everyone else. How many of us have rolled out of bed reluctantly, sleepily, unhappily, and hit the road to walk, run, jog, or stretch? How many of us have looked enviously at that middle-aged man who runs past us, the perfect shaped woman cycling intently, a dedicated swimmer doing lap after lap in the pool. How many of us have visualized ourselves doing the same thing, shaking our heads and wryly smiling at the thought? How many of us have wistfully looked at the treadmill next to us with the man clocking 15 minutes, then 45, then 75, while we stopped long ago? How many Monday morning starts have we missed, saying, this Monday is the first day for the rest of my life. I will start walking, running, jogging, lifting weights, being fit, only to drop off on Tuesday with aching muscles, deflated, defeated. Waiting for another Monday morning or another milestone birthday or another New Year's Day to restart our resolutions. And the years go by, and more years go by. The perfect moment for building the perfect body has not arrived. Gym memberships expire, the weather turns, trainer after personal trainer is sacked. But one day, it shall all come together, we say. And then lockdown. You cannot go out, the parks are closed, the gyms are shut, everything is shifted online, the perfect excuse, what can we do? Nothing is open. Hooray, let's watch TV. Till sickness, devastation, death, fatigue, stress, the pandemic has taken a toll in so many different ways. The only way to survive, eat better, they say. Turn vegetarian, they also say. Vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, come on. Pandemic, no. It's an infodemic. Today, we need to be fit to fight. Today, we need to move. Every day, we need to keep moving. Let's hope by the end of this episode, all of us will find the motivation to set our alarms for early morning and say what George Michael should have said long ago, wake up and go, go, go. I'm so excited to the Fit to Fight episode this morning. Welcome, Anthony, Karthik, and Tom, as always. We wish to start with you.
Well, thank you.
In the larger scheme of things, and you've been a part of this series in so many different avatars. You know it all, Tom. I'm so envious of you. How important is exercise coupled with a good diet regime to build a healthy, robust immune system? Can't we just be eating healthy food, keeping our stress levels low, and never exercising? Is that not a possibility?
It is a possibility, but it's not a scenario for health. That if we want to live a long and vibrant life, if we want this body to work for us in our 60s and 70s and 80s and not be restricted by our bodies, the rule is if you don't use it, you lose it. And so we have to find the type of movement that for us as an individual is empowering, successful. We're enjoying what we're doing to a degree to where I can do this. It doesn't matter what it is. And that's why our experts today are we're so lucky to have these two professionals with us today because they come from different venues, but I believe the message you'll hear is the same. So I'm not going to talk about all the science of why exercise is important. We've all heard that to one degree or another. And the answer is yes, if you don't use it, you lose it. And we don't want to be in our senior years and be limited to where we cannot walk up the stairs or we can't take our children or our grandchildren to the amusement park and walk around for a few hours with them. We want to be able to use these bodies as vehicles as we are aging. And in order to do that, we just have to keep moving in one degree or another.
So before I get to these two very fit young men, I want to just focus a little bit on the nutritional aspects of exercise. So basically, exercise and nutrition are linked in some ways, right? Could you explain that to us a little more?
Exercise, movement, whatever type of movement we do keeps the highways clear in our body. so that our bloodstream and our lymphatic system are able to bring the fuel in for our cells to work, to bring the nutrition into our cells, and then to take away the exhaust. The exhaust is removed by the lymphatic system. And most of us have heard of, if you exercise too much, you get sore the next day. And you're sore because of the exhaust from that exercise. It's called lactic acid. And that exhaust is accumulating in the muscles and in the joints, the joint lubrication fluids, and it's not being removed adequately. And what you find out is that the exercise that you do today that makes you sore tomorrow, if you go out and walk every day for a period of time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it should be, and then in 1 week you do the same exercise that last week made you sore the next day, all of a sudden you're not sore the next day. And it's because the movement has opened up the passageways to bring in the right nutrition and to take away the exhaust. So exercise is a critical, important factor in using the nutrition that you're spending your money or taking the time to make a wonderful meal. Exercise is a critical component of getting that nutrition into your cells.
That's an amazing explanation. Thank you for that. Just link to that. So I have these visuals in my head of, if at the risk of revealing my age, the old Rocky movies with him before getting into running, he would be swallowing 6 eggs raw. Yes, raw eggs. And now linked to that, you see, young, fit, tattooed men, well, maybe not tattooed, but muscular men pouring their protein shakes and the protein powders. And I go across the world seeing these shops with big protein jars being advertised all over the place. Could you explain that? Because I've been hearing some alarming things about some of those things. So,
well, the vision that you're describing is the person who is way out on the extreme, and that they're focusing to build a lot of muscle, and to build that inordinate amount of muscle, more than what might be natural for their body. They need the raw materials. If you're building a big house, you need a lot of raw material. You need a lot of lumber. You need a lot of bricks. You need more bricks than if you're building an average size house. So if your goal is to build a big house and to, like this, then you need more protein. But it doesn't mean that it's healthy for you in the long run. And so finding the right amount of protein is a little bit of an experiment for people. But it depends on what your goals are in terms of what amounts of protein you eat. In general, for most people, somewhere around 0.5 gram of protein per pound body weight. And in kilograms, I'm not sure what that would transition over. We'll ask our experts from India, Mr. Kartik, to do the math on that one, or what his goal is. But in general, for a healthy, vibrant body, about 0.5 gram per pound. But if you're wanting to build bulk, if you're wanting to bulk up, which is not necessarily recommended for everyone, but if that's your goal, then you're using the big tubs of protein, and you might be even doubling to 1 gram of protein per pound body weight, which is a lot, which taxes your system in other ways. So you don't want to do that long term. But it depends on what your goals are. And I think that's what we'll hear from Anthony, is more about what are your goals, and that determines the game plan you use.
So I'm going to, I promise everyone, I'm going to get to them in just 1 minute. I want to lay the foundation, the nutritional foundation, before we get to the real exercise. So Tom, one more question on this, and I'll keep coming back to you for your interventions. eat to exercise or exercise to eat?
Mm.
That's
Really
often
good question.
said, right? And you know the question.
Okay. Yes. Eat to exercise or exercise to eat? Well, if you eat, in order to use your body, you need fuel. If you're going to drive your car, you need petrol. You need fuel. And if you're going to drive all day, you need more fuel. So there's there's an amount of food that is critically important to keep your body working day to day. Now, as you begin exercising more than you have in the past, you need more food because you're burning more calories, which is a good thing. But you need a little more food. And what happens is that over time, as you're experimenting with this, you find what works for you. One of the goals, if you're exercising too much or not getting enough food, is that you wake up the next morning and you're really tired. You just don't want to get out of bed. And that's not normal for you. It means you pushed a little too hard the day before. Now, it's either you exercised a little bit too much or you didn't quite have enough food to refill the emptying gas tank in your car, you know. So how you feel the next morning is a good general indicator if you pushed it. Now, everybody's going to be a little bit sore if they're exercising more than their average. You know, everybody's going to feel a little bit, that's fine. But if you wake up in the morning, you just don't want to get out of bed. Like for me this morning, you know, it was 3:30 a.m. when my alarm went off for this event, and for Anthony, even an hour earlier, I think. You know, but that's a mental thing of, oh, I need a little more sleep. But if you wake up like that and it's not early in the morning for you, you may have pushed a little too hard yesterday, or the way that you refilled your body with fuel, what you ate yesterday, is not quite balanced for your body.
Okay, so Anthony, coming to you, you know, man was meant to wander. We were meant to move, right? We were meant to move. Too much, too fast, too soon, too difficult. Why is exercise such a difficult thing for most people? What does your experience tell you?
Well, I love this question because there's so many ways it can go, but really, you know, Tom touched on some amazing points, and I love to use the analogy of foundations for your home or a car because it helps us really create a more linear understanding of a very intuitive, non-linear creature that we are. Our bodies are miraculous. I mean, the potential of the human body and the mind is truly limitless, and it's been proven time and time again that we can do the most unthinkable things and recover against all odds. But what is it that we really need every day to slowly start adapting our physiology so we actually have the feeling of wanting to get up and move more, or to actually take on those experiences in pursuing a higher level of health and wellness that's more sustainable and efficient? And a lot of the hardest part is, you know, a body in motion stays in motion, a body at rest stays at rest. It's very much a physics thing at the end of the day. And it starts with small little habits. And the challenge is, if you have this big motivating rush of energy that you see because you see a movie or something, touch, moves, and inspires you, and you go right out to the track the next day where you see those people running on the way to work, and you try and just keep a good pace and keep up with them, and you haven't run since your college days, or you haven't run for, you know, a year or so, your body's going to let you know real quickly expectations versus reality. We see these funny videos all the time on the internet, expectations versus reality, of someone doing an amazing thing, and then we think, oh, I could do that, because we really could, but we haven't done the training. So I think a great way to have more compassion towards yourself is just to, number one, be honest where you are with yourself, and just be like, you know what, maybe I haven't done the best things for my body now, but those things were in the past, and the past is gone. And today I'm going to make some choices that I haven't made before and take some new steps of action. And what I would call this would be more the mindset of preparing yourself to move, really starting with daily little actions that slowly add up to long-term benefits. And for me, it's simple things like even making your bed if you didn't make your bed, or because discipline is really the development of a habit. And for a lot of people, it's just connecting the habits they may have very strong in some areas, such as making money, providing, being, being passionate about cooking food, and learning how to create a relationship where you just bring awareness towards your health and wellness and movement. So you see it on your daily list of things that you prioritize. And yeah, it starts with small little steps. And that's what I usually work on with students here. Doesn't matter what level of an athlete or someone who's coming off from an injury, recovering. I work with people of all ages. And many of my students are between 50 and 80 years old. And the main thing I always joke around is I'm a glorified accountability specialist. It's not everything I know, but at the end of the day, we all know what we need to do, and we still have trouble doing it. Even the most disciplined people in some areas have a real hard time making sure they don't skip breakfast, because the hierarchy with having a family, raising kids, the stress about the meeting, all these things take precedent over our own body. So I think getting really clear with yourself and, building a new beginning and starting with small daily habits and slowly living into that future you're creating will in turn help build more of a habitual process of just awareness around your movement. And that's where these action steps can start laying a foundation.
So I'm glad you used the word foundation, Anthony. I'm going to start tomorrow morning, I promise. What do I do?
So tomorrow morning, what I would say, this is a great question, is number one, plan on waking up and making sure that you get plenty of hydration, because one of the main things that we don't do is drink enough water or fluids. And when we're not properly hydrated, the body and the GI tract, your digestive system, doesn't really get in a harmonious rhythm. So I always recommend when you first wake up, the best thing you can do is I even fill my glass of water before I go to sleep. So when I wake up, it's already there and I already see it. This is a real pro tip. If you don't see your water, you're probably not going to drink it. And if you're not into drinking just water, because a lot of people aren't into drinking water alone, there's a lot of healthy, natural alternatives that don't have artificial sweeteners or whatnot. So being hydrated is a really good start. Already you're winning if you start hydrating. I'd recommend having like at least 16 ounces of water upon waking. I honestly, as an athlete, before I leave my house, I have about 50 ounces of water pretty much. I wake up. The next thing I would do is joints and tissues and ligaments really love motion. As Tom said, motion is lotion. If we don't use it, we lose it. It's so true. So a body that wants to stay at rest will just stay at rest because it has no other reason to move. But once you get moving, you'll realize all those things that you were kind of considering before you start moving, you're like, oh, those won't really such a big deal. So for me, what that looks like and what I recommend my students is working basic range of motion joint movements. And it could be as funny as sitting on the toilet, because you have to be there. And for me, I start with just some basic wrist prep. I pretty much sit here and I just do some nice wrist circles and start moving around my feet and ankles. And for me, this is a daily habit of just waking up my body and communicating to these different parts of my body. And it sounds funny, but our joints and ligaments don't have the blood supply that our muscles do. So oftentimes when you want to go do some movement in the morning and you feel stiff and have discomfort, it's because you've been in a state of rest, sleeping. And depending on how good your sleep is, you may feel more rested or less rested. But regardless of the fact, the synovial fluid, which is actually the fluid that lubricates our system from the inside out, its joint motion helps circulate synovial fluid. And all these things communicate with your brain and will give your body a sense of well-being and a sense of, I want to go do something. So we've covered some hydration. We're up in the morning. We're doing some basic joint mobility work. Another position, depending on your ability to put yourself in different positions, is you can't go wrong with a proper squat. So a squatting position is a very universal position for life. We use it to pick things up, put them down. it's constant. Many cultures spend a lot of time sitting in this squat position doing a lot of things. And yes, a deep squat position may be unreachable and very uncomfortable for people, but there's a few different ways that I like to load it or deload it depending on what you want to do. So for me, first thing in the morning, I don't want to sit in this position right away. So when I go into my kitchen and I grab my water, this is literally what I did this morning. I find the kitchen counter, which could be something about this high, and I love doing an overhead assisted squat with the kitchen counter. Sounds funny, but it makes me feel really good. It opens up my neck, my back, and essentially I take the counter and I sit back, and I don't have to go that deep in my squat, but I slowly move right and left, and I'm just stretching out my back muscles. I even let my head come through as if I'm from the side here, so my head can relax, and this stretches my neck. And I essentially just start by opening up my hips a little bit and let my head drop through, and that feels good. Another stretch that I really love is this front part of the body, the hip flexors and the areas that help us hinge get very tight as well. So I usually do some type of wall stretch where I bring both hands on the wall, and I'm just going to drive my back hip forward and keep my butt squeezed tight. And the goal is to just lightly, gently posture up and open up this whole front line that gets really constricted through either sitting or sleeping. And those two are game changers. A lot of the times I have neck pain. A lot of people, it's usually lower back or neck pain. These are also main contributing factors why people don't exercise. Simple thing, if you have a wall, you can take your hand, and if you have comfort enough to put your hand behind, you can put it here. And I can essentially just touch my hand to the wall, bend my knees, and just let the weight of my head fall down to the opposite side of my arm. And what I'm doing is I'm just lengthening all my traps and neck and essentially opening up the areas where these nerve bundles sit that give my brain communication to give me feedback of how I feel. So the whole goal is, if you drink water, do some basic joint movement and have a basic stretching routine. If you're into yoga, I know your culture is heavily into yoga. I'm an avid yogi. Some very gentle floor movements are excellent. If you watch young babies learning how to walk, they are masters of the floor.
Come back to yoga, Anthony, in just a minute. Thank you for showing us our morning routine. Tom, you wanted to interject at some point.
There are two things I'd like to say to people who are listening right now. As you watched Anthony, some people were probably thinking, well, that's nothing. That's not exercise. And I want to tell you, the pros, this is what they do to start their day. They do these very simple things that are not that easy to do in the morning. And you'll find when you grab the counter and you bend over, you bend your knees and you're rolling your hips from one side to the other, you'll feel the areas that are a little stiff. And the rule is you take it up to, but not into pain. So you take it up to the edge of, I better not go any further. And you just hold it there for a moment. Those simple little types of things make a world of difference in how your body wakes up in the morning and then it gets ready to go. And this is what exercise is. This is what smart exercise is you start with basics every day. The other thing I want to reinforce is I tell every patient, consistently, every single patient, Mrs. Patient, when you wake up in the morning, most of us, the first thing we do is go to the bathroom. The very next thing you do is you drink 2 big glasses of water within 5 minutes, right away. And you'll find at first, I don't like drinking. That's okay, do it anyway for 3 days. By the 3rd day or the 4th day, you are now looking forward to your water. Yes. Because your body all of a sudden is waking up right away when you put the water into it. I'm going to date myself that it used to be when you want to drive your car on a long distance, you check the oil, you check the petrol, the gas, make sure you have enough. You also used to have to take the cap off the battery to make sure there's enough water in the battery to hold the charge. Our bodies need water to hold the charge every day. So when you begin the day with 2 glasses of water, you'll find in a few days, you're just feeling more charged and ready to go.
Such good words.
That's amazing, Tom. Thank you for explaining that. At the risk of sounding really yucky, I'm going to blame the person who invented the modern Western toilet as a reason for bad health. The Indian toilets are basically have you doing the squats. And unfortunately,
Yes.
of us have adopted or adapted the Western toilets, which are in many ways very unhealthy. Karthik, coming to you, as a sportsman, you've had to work on your fitness, right? And it's probably been right from the time you were a little boy. Can you explain that journey of how you built up to a particular level of fitness and got to where you are?
Mala, in the sport I was in, obviously everything was different because I started playing sport, representative sport, and for the state at the age of 12. So obviously in India, where we come from, training techniques have all evolved over a period of time. And I'm pretty sure it's the same around the world too. The way the athletes train for baseball or tennis is so different 30 years ago to what it is now. Obviously, science and the way sports science has improved, you're guided by it. So for me, my career spanned around 26 years. So from the time or the day I started, the way I trained was very different to the time when I finished. So modern techniques came in. Obviously, the most important thing is what you learn from or what your sport dictates. For us, cricket demanded a certain type of training when we started, and that included a lot of running. Obviously, you build your stamina because it's played over 4 or 5 days. It's played over the entirety of the day. You're playing in the sun, and the climes we come from, the climates we are used to, obviously you train your body accordingly. Again, as both Anthony and Tom said, for us, diet was also a big part of it. Again, India is a very diverse culture. You don't ask a South Indian to eat roti. You don't ask a North Indian to eat rice. So that was something which had to be understood as well, because it's not just training alone. It's what fuel you put into it. You don't feed a petrol car with diesel or a diesel car with petrol. It doesn't work that way. And sometimes you are what you eat. And that is something which a sports person needs to understand from a very, very young age. And also, as I said, from where you come from. So that was something which was there when I started. And again, it has changed because once you hit a certain level of sport, you're traveling to different parts of India, you're traveling to different parts of the world, you're exposed to different training techniques. And again, it comes to the kind of teams you play for and the kind of personnel who have you. So they don't look at you as you're from the South, you're from the East, you're from the North or West. They train you in a very holistic and in a very wholesome way. So things have changed for all of us. And that's one of the reasons why for us, sports science is such an improved scenario in India right now. So I can't just pinpoint and say this is how it was, but lots of it had to do with obviously building your endurance for the sport which we started in. And again, that's changed to your specialization in the sport as well. So a batsman trains in a slightly different way to a bowler who trains in a slightly different way. A fast bowler trains in a very different way. But overall, I would say that there are certain things which are common denominators for all of us. And that is something which has evolved over a period of time to where it is right now.
So Murli, basically, I think what all of us need, and I guess what sportsmen actually practice, and it's built into their DNA, I guess, is discipline, right? Because unless you're disciplined, you cannot get anywhere in your sport. And all of you have reached, such amazing levels. How do you, or what would you recommend to parents with young children? What would you recommend to people like us? In India, more than anywhere else, we're just indisciplined. We'll sleep late, we'll watch television at all hours, etc. How do you get that mind to focus on?
I think it starts with the parents, Mala. To be very honest, the kids tend to follow what your parents do. And that is something, they are the biggest teachers on the planet. What they said, if the parents go to sleep at 10:30, if the lifestyle they follow is right, if they themselves train, the kids are forced to go and play. So there are lots of families, and I grew up in one where in the evening when I was a school kid, I had to go and play from 4 to 6. That was something which had to be done. And also, if I started at 4 and if I wasn't home by 6, and if I was even a second late, my mom would say that you're staying out the rest of the night, which meant that it was punctuality, it was discipline. It starts at a very young age, because many of us forget that it's only about discipline. Time is a big discipline. How you manage your time, how you respect other people's time, it all starts from there. Punctuality is respecting not only time, but also the others. So everything adds up for a sports person. And I think that starts at a very young age. And I think it starts from the family. If you are in that kind of a family, yes, it does. Yeah, you can be forced to go and train. You can be sent to training centers, but it is sometimes against the grain. There are so many times where many people, including the parents, when we train, then just like you asked Anthony, when I get up, what should I do? It's in the head. We are so much inside our comfort zone that we don't like to get out of it. Discipline comes from actually leaving that comfort zone sometimes. When you push that comfort zone, and when you experience what happens in that outside that comfort zone, and once you're used to it, then that experience builds into a lot of discipline as well. So everything goes hand in hand. And I just feel that if you want your kids to follow something, you do it yourself and you start doing it yourself.
Well said.
Yes, Tom.
Mala,
Yes.
I just want to reinforce what was just said. I said earlier, the rule is up to, but not into pain. And in terms of discipline, you want to be disciplined so that you push yourself a little bit. And as long as you always include up to, so you're pushing it a little bit and it's a little bit awkward or unusual for you, but you're not going into pain. You just take it up to the edge where you're a little uncomfortable. So what he's saying, right on the money. And anyone can do that every day by your own body's restrictions, just by listening to your body.
So, and that brings me to a key point in exercise. All of you have said morning, 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 morning. For those lazies or those who are not morning people, how important, Tom, is it to exercise first thing? Why can't we exercise at noon? Why can't we exercise at night? What's
really good question? Very good question. And you can. The thing that you will notice, if you do two things starting tomorrow morning: one, drink water, and two, follow Anthony's guidelines about just stretching a little bit on your kitchen counter. If you just start with that in the morning, nothing else because you're an afternoon or an evening exerciser, just by starting with that, you notice, oh, my body feels a little more free. Or you may not even think about it, but now you're just out and you've started your day and you're moving with more grace, if I can use that term, just by the couple simple stretches to wake up your body, because you activate all the flushing mechanisms, all of the circulation mechanisms. You know, when we're at rest, our blood flow slows down. Our lymphatic flow slows down a little bit because we're resting. It's still active, but not as active. So when you get up and you just stretch it a little bit, and it makes such a difference in how your body feels. So you do not have to exercise first thing in the morning. You can exercise whenever you want, any time of day, but certainly in the morning, drink water and just take 2 minutes to stretch. If that, just a little bit of time, and then notice how my body feels. Okay, all right, I'm on my day. I'm active in my day now.
So it's like when a dog wakes up, right? You're
Yes.
seeing that.
Yes. It's exactly it.
Okay.
Dogs are amazing.
Yes. Before I get to some more Anthony time, Tom, I just want you to focus a little bit on the fact that post-COVID, there have been a lot of accidents with exercise, right? We've heard a lot of people have tried to get back to shape very quickly after recovering from COVID. We don't completely understand it. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of people who had sudden deaths This has happened on the treadmill. This has happened when you get back to running. We've had some very prominent people in India pass away at the age of 45, 48, 50 at a very young age because they've gone back into exercise, or at least that's how it seems. What is your view on this? And can you just elaborate a bit more?
Yes, you bring up a very important point that the after effects of this virus are still being discovered, and we're still learning more. But when a person contracts the virus and becomes restricted in what they can do because they're not feeling well, take care of yourself, do the things that you're learning to do, eat good foods and take your vitamins and all of that, follow your doctor's recommendations. And when that passes, you don't go back to your peak performance. You say, okay, I feel fine now. I want to get back to normal. And you go out and run the distances that you were running regularly before. You don't do that. You start slow and just be kind to your body. Your body's has just been through an ordeal. We have a 7-month-old son, and 2 days ago he had his first fever, and it was 101.7, and he did very well. His body fought the bad bug, whatever it was. But then we noticed yesterday, and his fever broke that night. But then the day after, yesterday, his spirit was back, but he was just more clingy to his mother. His body just didn't want to move very much. And she thought, maybe he's still sick, and she checked the fever. There was no fever. No, he's fine. His body's just in a recovery stage. He needs a day or two to recover. If you've gone through COVID, your body needs some time to recover. You may feel fine. I'm ready to go out and tackle the world again. And we want to, but don't do that. Be kind to your body. You are never going to have a deficit to pay if you're kind to your body. You want to move it, but just not as aggressively as you used to. Don't go walking up 5 flights of stairs. Just don't do that. Take your time, be patient, and let your body acclimate to coming back to normal again.
So just linked to that, Tom, we noticed that a lot of very fit people got COVID. By fit, I mean people who were gymmers, who were running, who were exercising, they got COVID. And one of the studies that I saw linked inflammation to the fact that a lot of athletes have inflammation in their bodies. And perhaps that could be, I didn't quite understand that bit. So can you just throw some light there on this one?
Well, there's a difference between when you're talking about a professional athlete whose job it is to be extremely fit, and the average person who's exercising to stay healthy. They're different. And for the average person exercising to stay healthy, here's the rule, that if you exercise too hard, you pay a price later. Well, how do I know how hard to exercise? One of the best tools that I've used in my practice with our patients is to monitor your pulse when you're exercising. And you may think, I can run really fast, but if your pulse is going very high right now, you're exercising in what's called an anaerobic range, meaning you're not using oxygen as much. And it's a more difficult type of exercise to do. And professional athletes, they live there. Their bodies are very comfortable with it. But in terms of long-term health, anaerobic exercise is not a good idea. And so you monitor your pulse to make sure you're staying in a healthy zone of exercising. And I'm going to make up a number. If my range to exercise is 120 to 130 beats per minute of my heart, and I'll tell you how to do that, how to tell in just a minute. But if that's my range, 120 to 130, and that's aerobic exercise, the rebuilding, rejuvenating type of exercise, and I get COVID, and so I don't exercise when I have COVID, and then I'm fine, my symptoms are all gone with COVID, and I go back to exercise, and if I exercise at the same intensity I was exercising before, but now my pulse is 130 to 145, that with the same amount of exercise, and I can't tell if I'm not monitoring my pulse that that's happening. But your body's having to work so much harder because you're post-COVID, you've got to rejuvenate. But if you're monitoring your pulse, and if you're monitoring and that's how you determine how hard to exercise, by monitoring your pulse. When you get to 120 to 130, you say, oh, I'm in my aerobic pulse range, but I'm moving so much slower than I usually do. Well, no, this can't be right. I'm moving too slow. No, the pulse must be wrong. No, the pulse is not wrong. The pulse is your coach. It's your feedback that's telling you how hard you're exercising. And here's the rule. You never argue with your coach. Never. Anthony is my coach, and I
That's
never
right.
argue with the guy. I trust him implicitly. And he's such a great coach, and we'll talk more about that. But you monitor your pulse, and how do you know? You get a pulse monitor if you can. It's a watch or a strap across your chest that sends a message to the watch, and you set it for your range. And when you exercise higher than your pulse range, your ideal aerobic pulse range, the alarm goes off, beep, 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 beep. Oh, wow, my pulse is 142. I better slow down right now. And if you're exercising too slow, it goes beep, beep, beep. Oh, my pulse is only 94. I better pick up the pace a little bit. And the way you determine what your exercise pulse should be for aerobic exercise, it's 180 minus your age plus or minus 5. 180 minus your age plus or minus 5. And so that will give you a range, and that's your aerobic exercise range. And the rule is you never argue with your coach. Never. Well, I have to run harder than this, or I have to walk up the stairs or ride my bicycle faster than this because I'm not going to lose the weight if I do it. Like, no, you're in your aerobic pulse range. When you're in your aerobic pulse range, you burn fat for fuel. That's what you want, is to burn the excess fat. And the way you do that is by how hard you exercise. If you exercise too hard, you burn protein for fuel. That's why you want to stay in your aerobic range.
So Tom has partially answered my next question. Anthony, people who are into fitness regimes or sports people are naturally competitive, right? They compete against others, they compete against themselves. And it's always a question of numbers. I did 10,000 steps, I did 120 push-ups, I did this, I did that, I can lift this, I can lift that. A lot of men do that, excuse me, but this comes more from the males. How do you realize, or how do you realize this is my potential? So I cannot do 100 push-ups. And I read a study recently that said, this 10,000 steps a day is a big myth, because this was used to push a Japanese speedometer, which was launched because it could count 10,000 steps, and actually you're pretty okay with 4,000 to 7,000 steps. Everything is number based. We're just competing all the time. How do you realize your potential? How much is too much or too little for me?
This is such a great question, because we use numbers as a point of reference, but at the end of the day, to the body, it's really made up. And so we have a conscious mode of control, and then we have an autonomous mode of control, which is our our natural intuition, our nervous system, the way our body intrinsically adapts to its environment. And I always tell people health and well-being, really health, should be sustainable and efficient. So you can try and push yourself very hard, very intensely every day, like Doc was saying, but you're going to break down your body. You're going to create a lot of stress on your body, oxidative stress. You're going to feel sore all the time. Even if you're hitting those markers, you're not going to feel good. You're going to look great and feel horrible. And internally, you're going to be in a very diseased type state. Whereas if you take small little steps every day to slowly stretch yourself, over time, your potential for output will increase. And you'll be in that nice aerobic zone where you're not overstressing yourself. You can always get enough oxygen. You're burning the right type of fuel for the car that you're driving. So oftentimes, because of the messages we get in society, we want it all now. We want the instant gratification. I feel great when I haven't done anything, and now I've done 10,000 steps on my phone. That's amazing. And at the same time, you may not be ready for 10,000 steps, and a lot of people aren't. And unfortunately, those numbers, a lot of the times, they actually promote us to take a state of no action, because why would we even want to start when, look at me, I only had 2,000 steps for the day. What am I? My friend does 10,000 steps every day by 5 o'clock. And then the world of comparisons happens. So at the end of the day, you don't want to compare yourself to anyone but yourself. And it's like, I tell this all the time. Sometimes students will come in, they're like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm sore, da, da, da. And I tell them, if you go throw a ball over a fence to a dog, do you think the dog's going to stop at the fence and go, God, that was the highest fence I've ever tried to jump over. I've never tried to jump over a fence that high. The animals just do, based on, they know where they are, because they have this idea. They're connected to their body because they're not thinking with this super brain that we have as humans. So what we need to do is take small steps and look at numbers as a guide, but not as the end all be all. I'm actually much less of a numbers person most people may think, if you look at the performance I've achieved over the years in a variety of different practices. But where the numbers have helped me is baselines, like Doc was saying. He actually, back in the day when I started working with Doc, he had got me a pulse oximeter. And also I do the same heart rate variability. I check my pulse. It's a great way to see if you're overtrained as well. If your heart rate, your resting heart rate is elevated, or your temperature is too high in the morning, you can use these tools as a barometer to really know how much you're stretching yourself each day. So generally, if you feel good enough that you can keep doing what you're doing almost every day, that's usually a pretty good place to be. But anytime you're literally needing like 2 or 3 days until you can do the next leg workout because you can't even get off the toilet, even a Western toilet, then you know that it's too much, too fast, too soon. So it's really a marathon, not a sprint. Good things take time. And what's beautiful about the body, it's the system of integrity. What you put in is what you get out. Everything usually works in almost like a 6-week cycle for people. Usually consciously, we get bored after 6 weeks. We need to mix it up, especially with the way technology is always sending us these messages constantly. So if you look at things, usually 6 weeks is a nice sweet spot. So maybe for 6 weeks, start by a little bit of walking, joint mobility in the morning, extra water. And then where I was taking it after the joint mobility is try and take a walk before or after breakfast. I like to actually walk after I eat. It just makes me feel good in the morning. Or if you have an animal, it's great when you have a dog or an animal that you have to take for a walk, because it gives you that structure. And it's a great pastime to do with your family. Like some of my favorite times, even enjoying more intense physical activities, are my weekend walks with my wife and my kids, and just smelling the air, getting outside, feeling the sun hit your skin. There's so much health in just taking a basic walk, especially after you're hydrated and you've done some joint mobility.
Tom, you needed to add something?
Yes, please. Anthony said something, such an important pearl. I mean, everything he says is great, but this is such a pearl. He said, look great, feel terrible. That we have these visions of what's supposed to happen and what our perfect body is. And instead of look great, feel terrible because you're pushing so hard, I propose look good, feel great.
Yeah.
And so being kind to yourself as you start this process or you expand this process, depending on where you are, but being kind to yourself, allowing this 6-week period that Anthony just referred to is a great idea. And a theme can be look good, feel great.
I have no idea how many relieved people are out there watching this right now and what you said. Karthik, coming to you, most of us in our normal lives, not now, but in our normal lives, travel a lot, and as I'm sure you do, and in your cricketing years and even now as a commentator, how do you keep your fitness regime intact? Because very often, you fall into a routine, then you take that flight and you're gone. Then you say, I'm jet lagged, or, can't find a gym, or whatever it is, whatever excuses you use. But at least for me, somebody like me, travel becomes a huge excuse not to do your normal things. How do you handle it?
I think it's a very good one, because many of us get into that kind of a rut, and there are times, and anybody would be lying through their front teeth if they say that no, we don't feel that way. But the most important thing is, again, coming back to what I said before, is that once you have taught yourself and told yourself that this is what you're going to do, your mind automatically reacts to it in a very nice way, in spite of your body sometimes saying, or you not feeling good to get up. And I would just tell anybody, and this is something which I tell everyone, is that even if you can't do something big, at least do a 20-minute walk in the morning. At least get your metabolism going. You give a great, it's a great fillip to your metabolism, whatever be your age. If you can run. If you can jog. If you can run and jog, do that. If you can walk, do it for 20 minutes. It's a great fillip to your metabolism. At least do that. But I would also add this. I said there are times where it's mind over matter, to be very honest. And I completely echo what both the doc and Anthony have said. There are things which you push till a certain extent, but you can still push. The word or the line to underline is you can still push. We just sit back and just fall into that rut that we cannot push. Push it till the time, push a rubber band till the time it doesn't snap. And similarly, when you are traveling, there is still time and place to do at least 20 minutes to half an hour of the simple basic stuff. As Anthony said, you get up, even if you can't run, at least go stretch yourself. Do something which starts moving your body. And it's as simple as that. And I can tell you something right now. It's been 7 years since I last bowled or batted or played. Every time I have to go and tell a young kid how to do it, I can't do it because I've not done it. So it's over. You don't use it, you literally lose it. So it's for every small thing which we do. So again, mind over matter. You can, anyone and everyone can do it.
How do you, Anthony, coming to you, how do you differentiate with gender? Are there any specific things that men can do which women should not, and which women can do and men should not? Is there a difference? We've all heard about this growing up, but at least I'm not really very clear as to where you can push your limits with gender.
This is a great question, because there's also a lot of myths surrounding what women can't do and how their bodies adapt to, for instance, weight training. The common myth with women in weight training is, oh, if I lift weights, I'm going to get too bulky. It's going to happen. And 98% of the time, that's an impossibility for females. Men genetically have much more testosterone. Some women genetically have higher levels of testosterone. But in general, healthy weight training and basic holistic full body compound movements are excellent for both men and women, and in turn will help regulate your metabolism and help women put on better lean mass. But it's almost impossible for women to get too bulky and muscular from exercising. In most all cases, weight training for women does all good things for bone density, for all the issues that happen with osteopenia, osteoporosis, all the aging issues with gravity, just as for men. So in many ways, a lot of what healthy lifestyle and fitness routines should be work pretty well for both men and women. The only time I actually make slightly different changes for both men and women are more on stability issues. So women have childbearing hips, and actually most women's hips are much wider. So there's just a different angle in which forces hit their knees. So there's certain movements that as a coach, I may be a little bit more dependent on what I see in the woman and her stature, help them make a better position with their posture to promote more knee stability. Other than that, I pretty much train men and women very similarly. It's just a matter of output. So men, if you're a stronger, bigger man, proportionally, a woman who's a little bit smaller, obviously weighs much less. It's all about finding the right amount of stretch to stretch the body, the metabolism, the energy systems in your body, so you grow back stronger from the stress that you do through your exercise.
Tom?
Mala, something that Anthony said, I just want to clarify for our listeners. When he talked about the value of weight training for women, in their mind, they may think of these big, bulky guys lifting these big weights. I have never seen Anthony. He has never given me a weight greater than 8 kilograms.
Yeah, literally.
You know, it's the little weights, but in those motions that are very, very difficult to do, where you have to just breathe and conscious, and your muscles are really straining with small weight. So he's not talking about bulking up. So that's the way that women can do weight training, is very consciously and with the right angles and joints.
Yep. And Doc, body weight training is usually plenty when done right. Body weight training done properly, pulling, pushing, picking things up, carrying things, stabilizing things, plenty great for both men and women. In any area, we have certain demographics that push things extreme, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about wellness. That's a totally different thing from an athlete. So in general, listen to your body and choose an amount of exercise that pushes you just a little past where your comfort zone is.
So there are two reasons, right, where people exercise. One, of course, is, and we are pushing the whole health agenda around exercise. And we're saying, you know, to be healthier, to keep moving, to keep aging well, we need to exercise. However, Tom, most people at least used to use exercise as a weight loss tool, right? You want to lose weight, exercise. Then you can go and eat everything you want. How does this work? How does weight loss and exercise work?
That's a really good question, because so many people have heard that before. When you exercise in your aerobic pulse range, you use fat for fuel. And the goal, what we've said to our patients forever, the goal is not to lose weight. The goal is to lose fat. And it's different. Now, when you can have two men that weigh the exact same weight, 220 pounds, so about 100 kilograms. They both weigh 100 kilograms. One man is just got rolls of fat on him. The other man is a cricketer who has very little fat. He's got a lot of muscle and he's really healthy. It's the same weight. So weight is not the measure of health. How much muscle you have compared to how much fat you have is a much better measure of health. So you want your exercise to burn fat for fuel. And the way you do that, it doesn't matter what exercise you do, it's how intensely you do it. And by monitoring your pulse, you're able to stay in that aerobic range, burning fat for fuel. There's a lot to learn about this.
Is there a ratio, Tom, a fat to muscle? Is there an ideal ratio?
For men, the ideal non-athlete, so not a professional, but just a healthy place to be for men is somewhere around 18 to 22% body fat. For women, somewhere around 22 to 24% body fat. And that's to function in life and to have a well-functioning, aerobically fit body. Now, athletes can go down much, much lower than that, but they're professional athletes and they're doing it for a purpose, to perform. But in general, as part of a well-being lifestyle, those numbers are commonly accepted.
Karthik, injury must have played a role in your life, and you need to be safely exercising, right? And I want Anthony also to answer this after you finish. How do you stay away from injury? How do you practice a good exercise regime so that you don't get into trouble?
See, injuries are of different types, Mala. Some of them are overuse and repetitive injuries because of a certain sport you play. So you are bound to get injuries. So if a baseball pitcher is going to obviously have a few shoulder injuries, elbow injuries, as a bowler, a fast bowler tend to have more of knee injuries and back injuries. Spinners tend to have shoulder injuries because the shoulder tends to go through more contortions. And again, golfers have different injuries. So it's important to identify the sport you're playing and what are the chances of you getting an injury by playing a sport, and also the kind of exercises you do. So it's great to have a great physical trainer alongside and a great team of physios, because they're constantly monitoring the workload and also what you need to do. And also from your own side, you need to understand what your body is going through as well. There are, again, times where if you listen to your body in the right way, you are able to. This is about injury prevention from your own side. But also there are other exercises which are given to you, which need to be done. The stretches need to be done because of the fact that you're playing a sport and there's a lot of overuse and repetitive work which you do. So as a bowler, if I bowl around 30 overs a day, that's 180 balls. Their body is not biomechanically built to do certain or play certain kind of sport. But because of the kind of sports we play, we have to do it and do it to the best possible ability. So it's the key is to identify all of them and to keep making sure that you are doing those exercises. But again, in spite of all that, you're still going to have injuries. That's what a sports person goes through. You also have this. Certain people are also prone to injury because of the way their body is. That is also something which is very important. Certain people have never had injuries. I can give you countless examples of sports people from different sports who were so strong physically in their sport that they never had injuries. But there have been others who are skillfully very strong, but their bodies would break down. And then comes the role of your trainers, the kind of rehab program you're going through. If you've had a surgery, obviously most surgeries tend to go right because the sports surgeons are outstanding. But the key is to have a great rehab program, because once you've gone under the knife, the body is never the same again for a sports person. So what you go through with your physios and your physical trainers, the role of a physical trainer is very important. And also, when you're going through those rehab programs, there are certain pains which a physio and a physical trainer will say, push through it. You can endure it. There are certain other pains which they will say, sorry, your body is not healed enough yet. Push back. Again, coming back to what Tom and Anthony said, it plays everywhere in life. Where can you push through, and where do you need to just relax a bit and not be relentless? And the most important thing, again, is sometimes to be patient in your head. When you've had an injury, is to be patient, because I can tell you from experience, I had a shoulder injury and a knee surgery. And as a sports person, you're wondering, when you look at others running around, throwing balls, bowling and stuff, you wonder, have I ever done that? Was I ever able, or will I be able to do it going forward in the future? So all these doubts also creep in. So it's again about having the right personnel around you, the right kind of frame of mind to be in. But just regarding to injuries, these are the scopes which we fall under.
Thanks. Thanks for that. Karthik, I just want to get to one final question from with Tom and Anthony. And then Anthony, at the end of this, I want you to do a little demo for us. Tom, I think this is really important to understand that a lot of people who are now in their 70s and more, right? When they were growing up, they had to do a lot of physical activity. We didn't have as many cars. We didn't have as many facilities. There was so much that you did not have, and you just moved more, but you never got into a exercise regime, right? And then came the lazy years, where you got everything. You got the lazy boy couches, and you sat here, sat there. Let's say for a 75-year.
Oh, I think we've just lost Mala. I think
Yeah.
we lost the connection with her. So Jane Lynn, let's come on and do a couple of questions, but it's time to just about wrap it up. But let's hit a couple of questions if we can.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. So yes, we do have some questions from the audience, and I'm going to start with Anthony. Are there any specific exercises that you can suggest for activating my diaphragm by breathing exercises? In this particular case, this person, unfortunately, their phrenic nerve got damaged and paralyzed in a ablation procedure some years ago. So are there any things that you can maybe suggest to kind of activate the diaphragm through some breathing exercises?
Yeah, you know, it's awesome because I do quite a bit of breath work myself. Obviously, you know, for working with a student individually that's had an injury, I would do some personal research to really look into the details of your condition. But there's a few different things. So you can, some people call it fire breathing. But when I drive to the gym, for instance, I do this in my car very often because it's a great use of time. But I'll sit very, you know, in my car if I'm driving. And the goal is to actually let the diaphragm recoil the respiration of your body. So essentially I'd sit here and I put my tongue into the top of my roof of my mouth, and I would sit here and go, and generally I do a slow enough rhythm that I don't feel like I need to actually breathe to respirate, because the goal is the diaphragm recoiling is actually going to create the gas exchange needed. That's one. Another one that I do is actually when laying down here or using a Swiss ball, you can do, it's called diaphragmatic breathing, which is pretty much you're learning how to, instead of lifting your rib cage when you respirate and use the muscle of diaphragm to lift it, actually football players do this a lot if they're linemen, to learn how to put more power into the line, because if their ribs lift, they lose power. But if you let your belly, like belly breathing essentially. So if I'm laying on the ground flat and I can actually get feedback from the floor, I can inhale and push my belly into the floor and feel the feedback. It's hard to see, but I'm pushing my belly into the floor and then exhaling. And those are kind of two opposites, because one's expanding, one's contracting. I appreciate the question. That's a cool one. I like it. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Mala, we'll turn it right back over to you.
Okay, I was just very quickly getting to the point that older people need to know how much they can push themselves. 75 and older, what would you recommend, Tom?
Monitor your pulse. You'll never go wrong if you listen to your heart. Your heart will tell you the measurement of your heart function, your pulse rate will tell you if you're pushing too hard or not. And so that's the easiest way to tell.
Tom, Anthony, do you have older clients who come to you, and what sort of exercise regime do you recommend for them?
So in general, I'm a corrective exercise specialist by trade. So I help people move better by doing kind of like a bridge between a physical therapist and a fitness trainer. Generally, for all my students, which we consider like special populations, 60 and up, the goal is greater circulatory abilities. So working on full range of motion for all the joints of the body, any type of compound movement, such as developing your squat, a good lunge pattern, good ways of picking weights up, like from your side if you're carrying grocery bags, proper shoulder packing techniques for posture when lifting, carrying, especially if you're going to be carrying grandkids asymmetrically, carrying a load on one side, proper overhead carrying positioning. Most shoulder injuries happen when people go travel and they're lifting heavy luggage out of the plane. So learning how to properly stabilize your rib cage and your trunk so your shoulders can do their job. And most importantly, just the basics of stretching and combining that with actual movement. So a lot of people, stretching is great. And yes, it's very important. We talked about it with drinking water and making our joints go through full ranges of motion. And the movement patterns themselves are what actually set these flexibility practices in our nervous system, in our communication between our brain and our body. So for instance, when you go do a squat stretch or a lunge or a hip flexor stretch, like I showed, and then you go on a walk, that's a very nice combination because you're complementing and you're greasing the groove, and the brain will remember that. And what happens is your brain will start remembering these ranges of motion and start allowing you to go there more often with more ease. And the goal is we're actually slowly training our brain so our mind and body have a really honest communication highway with each other. And then we can do better movement capacity with less pain and dysfunction, because a lot of the times pain is just your brain's way of saying, hey, don't pick up that glass like that because it hurt your elbow last time. But what was that elbow pain coming from? It was usually some instability from your core or an injury at the distal end, the wrist. So as we work different exercises to develop the ability to use our core to pick something up from an extremity, over time, we build that connection, and the mind and the body are like, oh, no problem. And you kind of learn how to get out of your own way. So more full body movements are great because it's very important as we age to keep lubricating our joints. Like I said, the joints don't get blood supply like our muscles do. So doing full range motion exercises are very good. Also working on the floor. Developing how to move on the floor is what gives you power everywhere in your life. If you watch What It Takes a Baby to learn how to walk, it's actually incredible. I have 2 young kids. My son just started walking about almost a year ago. And it's unbelievable. When I watched both my kids develop their ability to walk, all they did was all the different hip mobility sequences that I teach, which are just learning how to articulate the range of motion in their hips, in their core, rotational cross patterns of the body. But getting on the floor is a really good way to deload the effects of gravity, which we feel as we get older, and to help us learn how to move like a baby again, which is really the funny thing about life. We're doing all this work just to get back from where we really started. But the truth is, we should have never left that place in the first place. So we should all be more like babies. They do everything right.
Or like dogs.
Yeah, or like dogs. Dog does one downward dog after a nice nap. His tissues are so healthy, he's just ready to go. It's just right away, he's just boom, and he's ready to go.
Tom, 2 quick takeaways from you. 2 quick takeaways. 2 things you want us all to focus on tomorrow morning.
Be kind to your body. Be kind. Look good, feel great. Never mind looking great. Just look good, feel great. That's a theme. And be kind to your body.
Karthik, 2 quick takeaways that you want people to follow.
Always say that please mind over matter. And the second thing, which I always tell people in a very different way, Doc spoke about it's more about building muscle, but also about burning fat. But people don't understand it that way. They always try and figure out how do we burn fat. The only thing I tell them is just imagine carrying a stool over your shoulder and walking with it for the whole day. How does it feel when you unload it and keep it? What a big load off your shoulder or body. How light do you feel? So just think of that excess weight which everybody is carrying. I think that is in itself a great motivation for you to lose it. Whether it is fat, whether it is body weight, which you're thinking of. But I'm talking about people who are in their mid-50s, mid-60s. It's not about having a great chiseled body or a shredded body with bursting muscles. It's about staying light, because then as you age, your knees are a lot better, your bodies are a lot better, they move much better. So these are the 2 things which I always encourage people to do.
Anthony, show me 3 things I can do tomorrow morning after getting out of bed, besides what you did earlier.
I love this. So first thing is you can sit on the floor because you may be tired, but you can get right on the floor, and no matter where you are, we can start opening up the hips and you can get in this butterfly position. And I even do these sometimes half asleep, and I actually meditate every morning after I wake up. So this is kind of like my pre-meditation flow. I sit here, I kind of center myself on my sits bones. Doesn't matter how tight your hips are. You can also bring your feet further away if they're really tight. but I do some gentle rocking right to left and kind of just tune into my side to side motion. And then I tune into my forward backward motion and just basically kind of gets grounded. The whole goal is kind of sit, get vertically displaced and kind of breathe and connect to your actual breath. And then usually there's a few different movements that I like, but you can't go wrong with some tabletop position. These are excellent for kind of getting the spine organized, which is really the communication of your nervous system to your body. So I stack myself, hands on my knees. You can put pillows on your knees if need be, and find a neutral spine, so nice and straight in your body. You're going to make sure the shoulders are over your wrists. You're going to inhale, go into extension, exhale, tilt your pelvis back, push tall through the shoulders, and start small. And as you get more into your breath, you can go for up to 20 of these. Usually I do. Just going to rinse out your spine into extension and your flexion. And these are really great for just opening up the different parts of your spine, also getting your shoulders and neck, everything kind of together. And lastly, since we're on the floor, just a really good basic one is if you get into a nice T position on your back, supine, hands are out flat. I cross my knees, and this makes it a little bit more comfortable. We're just going to do some gentle rocks right to left and just open up the sacrum and the lower back. And you can also do some little circular motions, which feel great. These are a great complement to doing any.
He always makes these look so easy. He makes them look easy, and they are not easy.
You could also just float off the ground with your legs.
Not fair, my friend. Not fair at all.
Right, not fair.
Hey,
Right.
it's just a push-up. If you work at a push-up long enough, it never stops. The basics are the best. That's
You're
just how
going to
we do
hear
it.
from me, Anthony, one of these days.
I wish I
But
could see you guys in person. You guys come to San Diego, visit. It's a great place. Anytime you come here, you all have a home. Anyone who's listening, reach out to me on Instagram, DM me. I'm a real person. I'd love to help you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been so exciting talking to the three of you about a subject I know very little about. And Jane Lynn, what are you going to do first thing in the morning? Let's get to the questions. What are you personally going to do when you wake up tomorrow morning?
What am I going to do? Well, I'm actually going to do some of those breathing exercises and those gentle stretches, especially the squats that Anthony showed us. And no, first thing, sorry, 2 glasses of water. and then
Drink
I'll
more
do
water.
those. Thank you. This was fantastic. We do have time for just a few questions, and I want to ask, so Dr. Tom, you talked a lot about protein, and could you suggest some good sources of protein, as well as a question, can whey protein cause damage to your kidneys?
Excessive protein can cause damage to your kidneys if you eat too much protein, and that's not possible for people eating food. But when athletes start supplementing, then they run the risk of taxing their kidneys too hard. Whey protein is not known to be toxic to the kidneys unless there is some type of either a food sensitivity to dairy or some dysfunction, some genetic vulnerability of the kidneys. Where protein in general, but whey, I'm not familiar with any studies that make whey more dangerous to your kidneys.
Okay, thank you. And Kartik, this is a question really about discipline that you've talked a lot about, and how to change some habits. So we have someone who has a daughter who's 3, who loves to watch TV and eat chocolate and doesn't eat vegetables. So how can we, what kind of suggestions do you have for parents to help their children kind of create more healthy habits?
That's $1 million question. If I started writing a book, I think it would be a bestseller now. I wish I had a singular answer to it. I think it's just a gradual waning of whatever. I think any habit which gets created has been created for a certain reason. So just to just put a plug on it, I think it would be a tough thing. It proves counterproductive. It's about possibly mixing the vegetables in certain ways which make it a lot more endearing for the kid, and obviously just cutting down on even TV in different ways, in small ways, rather than putting putting an abrupt end to it. And as I said, if I had to do a thesis on it and write a book, he would be possibly the most sought after book in life.
I think you're right. Like a miracle cure, right? We would
Yeah.
all enjoy that. And Anthony, one question, you've talked a lot about different ways to do different routines. Does it matter if we split the workout routine between the morning and the evening, or should we just do it one time during the day?
No, I mean, honestly, what works best for you is the most important thing for you to facilitate actually building a habit and doing it regularly. Split workouts are great. Sometimes being a dad and actually even owning a gym, you'd think I'd be working out all day, but the truth is it's really hard to get my own training in. And, I have 15 minutes here. I do some gentle stretching. I have half an hour there. I do some, cardiovascular work, but you can absolutely break it up. If you look at animals, we're nothing but just advanced animals. Like tissues and ligaments love moving regularly. So if you do smaller, more frequent workouts, that can work fine. It's much better than nothing. So yeah, whatever works for you to get moving, that's the most important thing. As long as you're not doing like 2-3 hour workouts, that would be more overtraining. But as long as it's split up, you can do some cardiovascular work in the morning and then maybe do some strength and conditioning training, more intense anaerobic type training where you're systematically working your energy systems to increase output for short, intense bouts of high intensity training. That can happen separately. That's a good way to mix it up. And I highly recommend splitting sessions if that's something that you like to do with your schedule.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we have several people who would like to know, each of you are very disciplined in your approach and your diet. So they would like to know, what is your ideal breakfast? So I'll ask all three of you. We'll wrap up with that. And Dr. Tom, will start with you, and then Kartik and Anthony will finish.
That's great. I got 2 minutes and then I got to get to an appointment here.
We'll start with you, Anthony. Go ahead.
That'd be amazing. Thank you, guys. So for me, I eat all whole foods. So for me, I don't really supplement unless it's something that I actually need to supplement. So I'm very blessed that my wife is a naturopathic doctor and knows Dr. Tom very well as well. And she has really taken my nutrition to the next level. And it's really everything's whole foods from the ground. I do eat meat, but it's all grass-fed, grass-finished, wild fish. I eat a very modified paleo diet, you'd say, if you want to put it in the trendy word. So modified paleo diet, I would say I'm gluten-free. I don't eat gluten about 95% of the time, unless it's a rare occasion. So I'm really big on the anti-inflammatory properties of my nutrition. And the only supplements I take are B vitamins and natural adaptogens and herbs that kind of help my adrenal glands regenerate, since I'm always, coaching and pushing myself as an athlete. But for the most part, I eat a ton of greens. I eat a very balanced plate. My plate usually looks like about 4 to 6 ounces of protein, depending, usually around 4, good handful or, cup worth of sweet potato, brown rice, or, like a legume. And then I'll have that with some fats. I do a lot of fats, avocados, olive oil. I cook with coconut oil, and we really just, I do really well with fat. So I eat a ton of fats and supplement carbs where I need them. Yeah, I love vegetables, lots of vegetables.
Thank you. And if you need to drop off, we do appreciate you being here.
Yeah, it was such an honor and privilege to be here with all you today. Dr. Tom, thank you so much, everyone. It was really great being with you, and I hope what we contributed makes a difference. Drink more water and keep moving.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye, Anthony. Dr. Tom, if you wouldn't mind, what do you eat for breakfast?
Our typical breakfast will be some sauteed vegetables, quickly sauteed, perhaps a couple of eggs, and gluten-free multi-seed toast. We found this toast, or this bread, that we really like a lot, and I'll have a slice of toast in the morning with a couple of eggs and some sauteed vegetables. That's a very common breakfast for us.
Sounds delicious. And Kartik, how about you?
I am vegetarian. The only thing I've always had are eggs, and I'm also gluten and lactose allergic, so I don't have them at all. And I've also found out through my allergy test that I need to have one fruit a day, and that is what I do. I have whatever fruit, and I bring it back after 4 days so that my gut is calm. And it's always one fruit. If it's banana on Monday, so it comes back after 4 days. So it'll be papaya next day and whatever pineapple or apple. And similarly, even with the breakfast, it's always different. So we have lots of Indian breakfasts I possibly won't bore you with. So every breakfast is different. And for me, the breakfast is the biggest meal. So we've got something, I have, as I said, I'm gluten-free. So I have gluten-free toasts every now and then, gluten-free cereal as well, which you find, and lots of Indian breakfasts, which work well with my system.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you both, Dr. Tom
Cheers.
and Kartik, for being here. And of course, Anthony, it's been so informative and energizing today. And we really appreciate you coming and sharing your knowledge, your information, and these easy techniques to help
Thank you
us
very
all
much.
stay fit. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined us for this 6-part series and for coming today. We have loved coming together each week to learn and to be motivated to take those key steps that boost our immune system and support our health and well-being. And I'm excited to announce that we have a special bonus webinar for Know We Well members on Tuesday, August 24th at 4 p.m. India time. We're coming back one more time for a live Q&A with Dr. Tom O'Brien and Ishi Khosla, clinical nutritionist and co-founder of the Celiac Society of India. Dr. Tom and Ms. Khosla, as you know, have been two of our leading experts and co-creators of this series and are looking forward to coming back to answer your questions that will further help you on your healing journey. Everyone who registered for our webinar series will receive a complimentary Know We Well Regenerative Whole Health membership. So please look for an email on Wednesday for how you can activate your membership if you haven't already, and how to register for this very special Part 7 live Q&A. As a reminder, as a part of your Know We Well Regenerative Whole Health benefits, you can connect with our experts in the Know We Well community. You can access the past episodes from this series, the related handouts and resources, as well as 40 and growing educational programs and evidence-based resources. And finally, when the webinar ends today, a brief survey will pop up. We ask that you take just a minute to give us your feedback on this series, because your feedback is very important to us so that we can continue to offer the educational resources that are most helpful to you on your healing journey. Thank you again for joining us today, and be well.